always knew I didn't belong in that house. After my parents divorced, my father married Evelyn, a woman who never saw me as anything but a burden. She already had 2 kids of her own, Liam and Grace, and from the day they moved in, it was clear where I stood. They were the priority, and I was the inconvenient reminder of a past my father was eager to forget. At first, I tried to be part of their world. I helped Liam with his homework, listened to Grace's stories about her friends, and stayed out of Evelyn's way as much as possible. But no matter what I did, I was never enough. Evelyn would complain that I was too quiet, that I didn't fit in with the family dynamic, that I didn't participate enough. Dad would just nod along, his eyes glazed over, as if he couldn't wait for the conversation to end. Birthdays were the worst. Evelyn always made a big deal out of Liam and Grace's special days, decorating the house, ordering cakes, inviting their friends. My birthday was an afterthought, a cupcake with a candle after dinner, if I was lucky. One year, Evelyn forgot entirely, and when I quietly mentioned it, she just sighed and said, "We'll celebrate later." We never did. When my mom passed away, things got worse. Evelyn found a way to get her hands on the small savings Mom had left for me, a fund she had built slowly, hoping to pay for my college. One night, I overheard Evelyn telling Dad that the money would be better spent on Liam's private school tuition. He didn't argue. A week later, the savings account was empty. The betrayal hurt more than anything Evelyn could have done on her own. I wanted to confront Dad, to make him see how much it hurt, but I knew it wouldn't matter. He had chosen his new family, and I was just a leftover piece from his old life. Despite it all, I kept my head down and pushed through high school. I found refuge in my art classes, where I could lose myself in drawing and painting. I spent hours at the community centre after school, where the art teacher, Ms. Morgan, encouraged me to submit my work to local exhibitions. It was the one place I felt seen and valued. Then came Dad's 60th birthday. Evelyn planned a huge party, inviting everyone they knew, family, friends, business colleagues. Aunt Beth insisted that I come. She's always been the only one who seemed to notice how I was treated, and I agreed, mostly because I didn't want her to worry. When I arrived, I saw that Evelyn had made name tags for everyone. Mine was waiting on a small table by the door, but when I picked it up, my stomach twisted. The tag read, Sadie. Obligation. I froze, unable to comprehend how anyone could think that was remotely okay. Evelyn, noticing my reaction, gave a tight, mocking smile. "It's just a joke. Lighten up," she said, brushing past me. Aunt Beth appeared at my side, eyes wide with anger. "You don't have to put up with this," she whispered. But I did. I always had. I didn't know how not to. Dinner was served in the backyard under strings of white lights. People toasted Dad, praising his successful career, his dedication to his beautiful family. I could feel the anger boiling in my chest, but I stayed quiet, forcing a smile when people looked my way. Finally, Evelyn clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. "Let's have Sadie say a few words about her wonderful father," she announced, eyes glinting with challenge. My heart pounded, but something inside me snapped. I stood slowly, the silence thickening around me. I took a deep breath. "I'd like to thank my father and Evelyn," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "You've taught me a lot. You taught me how to be strong on my own, how to survive without relying on anyone's support. You showed me what it means to be an outsider in your own home. And for that, I thank you. Because now I know that I deserve more than to be treated like an obligation." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, some exchanging glances. Evelyn's face turned red, and Dad looked at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. I didn't wait for anyone to respond. I just walked out of the backyard, past the guests who stared and whispered. Aunt Beth caught up with me at the gate, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. That night, I didn't go back to the house. I stayed with Beth and made a plan. I would leave. I would build a life that didn't revolve around being tolerated. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Leaving wasn't as easy as it sounded. Aunt Beth's spare room became my sanctuary, but every morning, reality hit like a wave, crashing over me. I had no plan, no money, and no idea how to start over. I could feel the remnants of that party clinging to me. Evelyn's mocking eyes, Dad's blank stare, the whispered gossip. But Beth was my constant, her calm presence reminding me that I had done the right thing. Beth encouraged me to apply to the local community college. I was hesitant. Tuition wasn't cheap, and I didn't have my mom's savings anymore. But Beth wouldn't let me give up. We spent late nights filling out scholarship applications, searching for grants, and planning how to make it work. Finally, the acceptance letter came. I was in. I was going to study art, something I had always loved but never thought I could pursue seriously. I remember holding that letter and crying in the kitchen while Beth hugged me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of away from it. College was more than just classes and assignments. It was a second chance. I found myself surrounded by people who didn't know my past, who didn't see me as a burden or an obligation. I was just Sadie, the girl who loved sketching in the park between lectures. I made a few friends, Alex from my art history class, who always had paint on his hands, and Mira, who shared my love of late-night coffee runs and aimless city walks. One evening, while working on a project at the campus library, I got a call from Dad. Hesitating, I finally picked up, bracing for whatever lecture he had prepared. Instead, his voice was quiet, almost unsure. "Sadie, I heard you're in college now," he said. I could tell he was trying, but it was too late to play the caring father. He mumbled something about hoping I was doing well, but it sounded more like an obligation than genuine interest. I ended the call with a polite but firm, "I'm fine. I have to go." After hanging up, I sat there staring at my phone. I wasn't sure what I had expected. Maybe an apology, maybe acknowledgement. But Dad was still stuck in his own world, still seeing me through Evelyn's lens. I closed my sketchbook and went home, telling myself I wouldn't let his voice shake me anymore. The next few months were busy. Midterms, late-night study sessions, and volunteering at the community art center. It was exhausting and wonderful at the same time. One afternoon, while setting up for an exhibition, Ms. Morgan appeared, surprising me with an invitation to showcase my work at a city gallery. I couldn't believe it. I had gone from sketching in my room to presenting my art to strangers who genuinely appreciated it. On the night of the exhibition, I stood in the gallery, surrounded by people discussing the pieces on display. My paintings hung on the walls, vibrant and raw, telling stories of longing, resilience, and hope. When Alex and Mira showed up, cheering me on, I realized I had found my place, a place built by my choices, not dictated by someone else's expectations. At the end of the evening, as I was helping clean up, My phone buzzed with a message from Aunt Beth. "I'm so proud of you. Keep shining." I smiled, knowing that despite everything, I had created a new family, one bound by kindness and understanding rather than blood. But just as I was about to leave, another message came through, this time from Evelyn. I hesitated before reading it. "You've really hurt your father," it read. "You owe him a conversation." My chest tightened, but then I felt a surge of calm. I didn't owe anyone anything. Not anymore. Instead of replying, I locked my phone and walked into the night, my heart lighter than it had been in years. A few days later, while working late at the studio, inspiration finally hit me. I would paint a girl standing at a threshold, one foot in the shadows and the other in the light. It would be a reflection of my own journey, moving from a life of confinement and expectation to one of freedom and self-acceptance. The painting consumed me. I skipped meals, lost sleep, and let my thoughts blur into the colors on the canvas. Alex and Mira would bring me snacks and gently remind me to take breaks, but they never tried to pull me away from my focus. When it was finally done, I stood back, paint streaked on my arms, and felt a swell of pride. It wasn't just a painting, it was my story, one that I was finally ready to share. Submission day came quickly, and I dropped off the painting with my heart pounding. A week later, I got the call. I had made it to the final round. The exhibition would be held at the State Gallery, and the finalists' works would be judged by a panel of renowned artists. I could hardly believe it. That night, Aunt Beth cooked a celebratory dinner, and we sat on her tiny balcony, laughing and eating spaghetti off mismatched plates. I told her about the painting, the story behind it, and she listened with that soft, knowing smile that always made me feel safe. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to believe that I could really make it as an artist. The exhibition day arrived, and I stood in the gallery, surrounded by pieces that spoke of loss, growth, and transformation. When it was my turn to present, I talked about my journey, about choosing to leave a toxic environment and finding strength through self-discovery. I spoke with conviction, even when my voice wavered. The audience's applause was warm and genuine, and for once, I didn't feel like an imposter. Afterwards, as I stood near my painting, a familiar voice cut through the hum of conversation. I turned to see Dad standing there, looking older than I remembered. He approached slowly, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Saida," he started, his voice low. "I didn't know you felt this way." My chest tightened, and I could feel my pulse in my ears. "You didn't know because you'd never asked," I replied, not unkindly, just honest. He hesitated, glancing at the painting, then back at me. "Evelyn she thought you'd come back eventually, that you'd realize family sticks together." "Family doesn't make you feel like a stranger in your own home," I said softly. "I spent years trying to fit into a life that didn't have room for me. I'm done trying." His shoulders slumped, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but I couldn't forget the years of silence, the way he let Evelyn's disdain dictate how I was treated. "I'm proud of you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't see it before, but I get it now. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part knew that words were just words. It would take more than an apology to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. "Take care of yourself, Dad," I said, and before he could reply, Alex and Mira appeared at my side. guiding me out into the crisp night air. We wandered down the city streets, the night buzzing with energy. Alex slung an arm around my shoulders, grinning. "You crushed it in there," he said. Mira nodded in agreement, handing me a cup of hot cocoa. I couldn't help but laugh, the tension finally melting away. As we reached the park, I glanced up at the stars, feeling a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I knew I wasn't done healing, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to confront the past. I was no longer that girl who stayed silent. I was Sadie, the artist, the survivor, the one who chose herself. Life didn't settle into some perfect rhythm after the exhibition. I didn't wake up the next day feeling completely healed or at peace. There were moments of quiet triumph, yes, but also nights when I'd lie awake, memories gnawing at me, and wonder if I'd really moved on. My decision to distance myself from Dad remained firm, but that didn't mean it didn't hurt. One evening, while sketching in the park, Mira plopped down next to me, balancing 2 hot coffees. "You've been quiet lately," she said, her eyes scanning my unfinished drawing. "Just thinking," I replied, not sure how to sum up the mess of emotions that had tangled in my head since seeing Dad. "About your dad?" she guessed. I nodded, tracing patterns in the dirt with my shoe. Mira didn't offer advice or try to fix it, which I appreciated. She just sipped her coffee and listened. "It's okay to feel conflicted," she finally said. "Sometimes love and hurt coexist." That simple statement brought a lump to my throat, and I just nodded, grateful for her presence. A few days later, I received an unexpected letter. The handwriting on the envelope was Dad's, and for a moment I couldn't move, just staring at it on the table. When I finally tore it open, his words spilled out like an awkward confession. He wrote about the night of the exhibition, about realizing how absent he'd been. He apologized, but it wasn't just an apology. It was an admission of his own failings as a father, of how he let Evelyn's opinions shape his own. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to cling to that letter, to hold it up as proof that he finally saw me. But another part couldn't ignore how long it had taken, how many years of silence I had endured. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, deciding to leave it for another day. That weekend, Beth and I took a road trip to the coast. The ocean stretched out before us, endless and wild. We walked along the shoreline, talking about nothing and everything. She told me stories of her own messy family, how leaving home was the best choice she ever made. "Sometimes choosing yourself feels selfish," she said, "but it's the only way to truly live." Standing there, salt in the air and wind whipping my hair, I let go of some of the guilt I'd been carrying. Dad's words would take time to process, and that was okay. I didn't have to forgive him right away, or at all. What mattered was that I had chosen a life that felt right for me. When we got back, a package was waiting at the door. Inside was a framed photo from the exhibition, me standing next to my painting, a proud smile on my face. There was no note, but I knew Dad had sent it. I hung it on my wall, not as a reminder of him, but as a testament to how far I'd come. I threw myself back into my art, working on a new series inspired by the ocean, pieces that spoke of resilience, movement, and growth. I called it Unbound, and when the college hosted a small showcase, I was invited to present it. Mira and Alex helped me set up, and when the doors opened, I was shocked to see how many people came to see my work. One visitor, a local gallery owner, approached me after the presentation. She wanted to feature my series in her space. I couldn't believe it. I felt a surge of pride, not just for my art, but for the choices that led me here. After the showcase, I treated myself to a quiet night in, sketchbook in hand, and reflected on how much I'd changed. My art wasn't just an escape anymore. It was my way of reclaiming my story. I had learned to let people in, to trust my instincts, and to believe in my worth. I was no longer that girl standing on the edges of someone else's life. I was crafting my own, one brushstroke at a time. The following months were a blur of excitement and quiet reflection. My series Unbound was featured at the gallery downtown, and seeing my work displayed in such a professional setting was surreal. People came and went, commenting on the emotion in each piece. A few even asked to buy prints, and for the first time, I felt validated not just as an artist, but as a person reclaiming her own story. Alex and Mira organized a little celebration at our favorite coffee spot, where we toasted with lattes and homemade muffins from the barista who had taken a liking to our trio. I found myself laughing more freely, sharing stories without that lingering shadow of doubt or fear that used to hang over me. One evening, I received a message from Dad. It was simple, a photo of the painting from the exhibition, still in the frame he had sent, with the caption, "I showed it to your grandparents. They're proud of you." I didn't know how to respond. For so long, I had yearned for his approval, but now, standing on my own, I realized that pride from my family didn't define my worth. I set the phone down and went back to sketching, letting the feeling settle. A few weeks later, I got a call from the gallery owner. She wanted to host a solo exhibition, entirely focused on my journey from struggle to self-acceptance. The idea terrified me. Could I really put that much of myself on display? I talked it over with Beth, who simply smiled and said, "You've already shown the world your strength. This is just another chapter." The preparation was exhausting, but exhilarating. I poured my heart into new pieces, abstract expressions of pain giving way to hope, images of hands breaking free from chains, and delicate line work symbolizing personal growth. Alex and Mira helped with logistics, and Beth offered endless support, cooking meals when I was too busy to think about food. The night of the solo exhibition was packed. Familiar faces and strangers alike wandered through the gallery, taking in the story I had laid out for them. At the center, the piece that had started it all, the girl at the threshold, served as a reminder of the moment I chose myself. To my surprise, Dad showed up, standing awkwardly at the entrance. He didn't try to make a scene or push his way through the crowd. He just watched, quietly, as I spoke to guests and answered questions about my work. When I finally approached him, he simply said, "You've created something beautiful." I didn't know how to respond, but it didn't feel like the old days, like I was grasping for his approval. I just nodded, and we stood there in a rare moment of peace. He didn't apologize again or make excuses. Maybe he knew words couldn't undo the past. We parted without making plans to meet again, but for the first time, I didn't feel angry or hurt. Just calm. Later that night, back at the apartment, Alex, Mira, and Beth joined me for a toast. We talked about the future, how I wanted to keep creating, to see where this path would take me. I knew it wouldn't always be easy, but I had built something real, something mine. I wasn't defined by my past anymore. I was Sadie, the artist, the friend, the woman who chose freedom. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about Dad, Evelyn, and all the pain I had carried. I didn't know if I'd ever truly forgive them, but I was done letting their choices dictate my life. Moving on didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean allowing myself to grow beyond the hurt. The next morning, I woke up to a message from a local art critic who had attended the exhibition. They wanted to write a feature about my journey and the themes of resilience in my work. I couldn't believe it. I sat there, phone in hand, and realized that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I made coffee, sat by the window with my sketchbook, and let the sunlight pour in. I was no longer afraid of being seen or heard. I was no longer the girl in the shadows. I was finally living, and that was the most beautiful art of all.